That Christmas morning started like a scene from a movie. It was 2025, and the air in our small apartment was thick with the scent of pine needles and fresh coffee. Snow was falling gently outside, blanketing the world in a quiet peace that felt like it was just for us. I looked over at her, her face lit up by the twinkling lights on the tree, and my heart swelled. This was it. This was the woman I was going to spend my life with. We had been together for years, building a life, sharing dreams and creating memories. I truly believed our love was unshakable, a fortress against whatever the world might throw at us. This was our forever, or so I thought. We exchanged gifts, laughing as we tore open the paper. I had gotten her the vintage camera she'd been eyeing for months, and her gasp of delight was everything I had hoped for. She gave me a beautiful leather-bound journal, telling me to fill it with our adventures. We were in our own little bubble of happiness, completely oblivious to the storm that was about to break. It's funny how your mind freezes these perfect moments, holding them in crystal-clear detail right before everything shatters. I remember the exact shade of red on her sweater and the way her eyes sparkled. It was a perfect, beautiful lie. Later, as she was making another pot of coffee, I noticed her phone light up on the couch. It was face up, a simple oversight that would change everything. A message preview popped onto the screen, a name I recognized with a jolt of ice in my veins. Her ex. The words were simple, yet they hit me with the force of a physical blow. "Merry Christmas, my love. Wish I was spending it with you." My breath caught in my throat. It wasn't just a friendly holiday greeting, the term of endearment, the longing in his words. It was a dagger straight to my heart. The perfect Christmas morning dissolved into a sickening haze of confusion and dread. I stood there, frozen, staring at the phone. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what I had just seen. Was this a mistake? A misunderstanding? But deep down, I knew it wasn't. The warmth and joy of the morning evaporated instantly, replaced by a cold, heavy dread that settled deep in my gut. The festive lights now seemed to mock me, illuminating a betrayal I never saw coming. The coffee she was brewing suddenly smelled bitter, and the silence in the room was deafening. Christmas was over. In that single moment, our shared world, the one I cherished so deeply, had been fractured beyond recognition. I picked up her phone, my hands trembling so badly I could barely unlock it. I know you should never go through someone's phone, but at that moment, I wasn't thinking about privacy or trust. I was a man drowning, desperately searching for a piece of solid ground. What I found was a flood. There were weeks of messages, secret conversations filled with "I miss yous" and "I love yous." They were planning to meet up. They were reminiscing about their past. It was a full-blown emotional affair happening right under my nose in the home we had built together. The shock was overwhelming, a physical sensation that made me feel dizzy and sick. The anger came next, hot and blinding. It was a raw, primal rage that I had never experienced before. How could she? After everything we had been through, everything we had shared, I thought about all the times I had worked late to provide for us, the sacrifices I had made, the unwavering support I had given her. It all felt like a joke. She had been playing me for a fool, smiling to my face while texting another man, her ex, that she loved him. The betrayal wasn't just about the messages, it was about the lies, the secrecy, and the complete disregard for my feelings and our relationship. When she came back into the room, coffee mugs in hand, she saw the look on my face and knew instantly. Her cheerful expression crumbled. I confronted her, the phone held up like a piece of damning evidence. The conversation that followed was a blur of tears, excuses, and half-truths. She swore it was nothing, that she was just confused, that she loved me and only me. She begged for forgiveness, promising to cut him off completely. Her tears seemed so genuine, her regret so palpable. I was looking at the woman I loved, broken and pleading, and a part of me desperately wanted to believe her. Against my better judgment, I decided to try. We talked for hours, through the night and into the next day. The Christmas decorations now looked like relics from a happier time. I laid out my conditions: no more contact, full transparency, and a commitment to rebuilding what she had broken. She agreed to everything, crying and holding me, promising she would never hurt me like that again. I made a choice to forgive, but it was a fragile, conditional forgiveness. I didn't know it then, but I wasn't fixing a crack in our foundation. I was just papering over a chasm that was about to swallow me whole. In the weeks that followed that horrible Christmas, I tried to convince myself that we could heal. I chose to believe her promises. I wanted our life back, the comfortable, happy life we had before the betrayal. Taking her back felt like the right thing to do at the time, or maybe it was just the easiest. Breaking up meant facing the world alone, explaining our failure to friends and family, and dividing a life that had become so intertwined. The thought was terrifying. So I clung to the hope that her remorse was real and that our love was strong enough to overcome this. I was a fool, blinded by my own desire for things to be okay. I watched her like a hawk at first, checking her phone, questioning her whereabouts. But that kind of suspicion is exhausting. It eats away at you, turning you into a person you don't recognize. Eventually, I forced myself to stop, to try and trust her again. She seemed to be trying too. She was more affectionate, more attentive. She deleted his number in front of me and blocked him on social media. It looked like she was making a genuine effort, and I allowed myself to relax. I let the false sense of security wash over me, ignoring the little voice in the back of my head that told me something was still wrong. Looking back now, the warning signs were all there, waving like giant red flags in a hurricane. There were times she'd guard her phone a little too closely or quickly switch screens when I walked into the room. There were vague excuses for why she was late coming home from work. I would ask, and she would have a plausible story, a justification that seemed reasonable on the surface. But there was always a flicker of something in her eyes, a hesitation that I chose to ignore. I didn't want the conflict. I didn't want to reopen the wound. It was easier to accept her lies than to face the painful truth I already suspected. My desire to believe in the good of the person I loved was my undoing. I made excuses for her behavior because the alternative was too painful to contemplate. Admitting she was still lying would mean admitting I had made a mistake in taking her back. It would mean that I was naive, that I had been played, and my ego couldn't handle that. So I stayed, living in a carefully constructed reality where we were a couple working through a rough patch. I was actively participating in my own deception, choosing comfort over truth, and that decision would cost me dearly. The final discovery came months later, not from a phone but from a mutual friend who just couldn't bear to see me being deceived any longer. The friend sat me down, their expression was so grave, and told me what they knew. It wasn't just texting, it was a full-blown affair. She had been seeing her ex the entire time, meeting him secretly, sleeping with him. She had been living a complete double life. The camera I gave her for Christmas, she had used it to take pictures of him. The journal she gave me. It was probably a way to keep me occupied while she was out betraying me. The truth hit me not like a wave, but like a tsunami, wiping out everything I thought was real. The details were sickeningly specific. My friend told me about dates they had gone on, places they had been. It turned out that many of the times she claimed to be working late or out with her girlfriends, she was with him. My mind replayed every single one of those moments, every lie she had told me, and it all just clicked into place. The puzzle pieces I had refused to look at now formed a clear and horrifying picture. She hadn't just made a mistake, she had orchestrated a long-term calculated deception. She had looked me in the eye, told me she loved me, and then left to be with another man. My initial reaction wasn't even anger, it was a profound, soul-crushing sadness. The woman I loved didn't exist. She was a character she had been playing, and I had fallen for the performance. My self-esteem, which had already taken a hit, was now completely shattered. What was so wrong with me that she had to seek comfort and love elsewhere? Was I not enough? Not handsome enough? Not smart enough? Not exciting enough? These questions swirled in my head, a toxic vortex of self-doubt and loathing. I felt worthless, disposable, and utterly humiliated. The anger followed soon after, a white-hot fury directed not only at her but also at myself. I was angry at her for her selfishness, her cruelty, and her cowardice. How could someone do that to another human being, especially one who loved them unconditionally? But I was also furious with myself for being so blind, so trusting, so willing to ignore my own instincts. I had been given a second chance to see the truth on that Christmas morning, and I had thrown it away. I had enabled her deception by choosing to believe her lies. The weight of my own foolishness felt just as heavy as the weight of her betrayal. The timing of this final revelation couldn't have been worse. Just as I was processing this catastrophic new information, she fell ill. It wasn't life-threatening, but it was serious enough that she needed surgery and a significant recovery period. She needed round-the-clock care, and with her family living out of state, I was the only one there. So I was trapped. Here was the woman who had systematically destroyed my heart and my sense of self, and now I had to be her caregiver. I was stuck in the same apartment, sleeping on the couch, living with the ghost of her betrayal in every room. Every day was an exercise in emotional torture. I had to help her, to be kind and compassionate, while inside I was screaming. I would bring her food, change her bandages, and listen to her complain about her discomfort, all the while thinking about her and her ex. I felt like a pathetic cliché, the good guy being taken for a ride. My friends told me to leave, to let her figure it out on her own. They said I owed her nothing, but some twisted sense of duty, or maybe just sheer emotional exhaustion, kept me there. I couldn't bring myself to abandon someone in a moment of physical vulnerability, even if she had abandoned me emotionally long ago. The dynamic was confusing and mentally draining. One moment, she would be thanking me with tears in her eyes, telling me how much she appreciated me, and I would feel a flicker of the old connection. The next, I would remember the lies and the affair, and a wave of resentment would wash over me. I was living in a state of constant emotional whiplash. My feelings for her were a tangled mess of love, hate, pity, and disgust. I hated her for what she did, but I still cared about the person I thought she was. It was a daily battle between my heart and my head. This period took a massive toll on my mental health. I stopped eating properly. I couldn't sleep. My confidence was at an all-time low. I felt like a shell of my former self, just going through the motions. Staying to help her wasn't a noble act, it was an act of self-destruction. I was putting her needs above my own, even after she had proven she would never do the same for me. I was allowing the toxicity of the situation to poison me, delaying my own healing process because I felt obligated to fix her. I was her nurse, her roommate, and her victim, all at the same time. The breaking point came one afternoon as she was sleeping. I was sitting on the couch just staring at the wall, when I realized I hadn't genuinely smiled in months. I had been so focused on her betrayal, her illness, her needs, that I had completely lost myself. I was a supporting character in the tragedy of my own life. It was in that quiet, lonely moment that a new feeling emerged, one that had been buried under all the anger and sadness, a desire for peace. I finally understood that I couldn't find peace while living in the wreckage of our relationship. My responsibility was no longer to her, it was to myself. I knew what I had to do. It wasn't going to be easy, but it was necessary. When she was a little stronger, I sat her down and told her I was leaving. I didn't yell, I didn't cry, I simply stated the facts. I told her I knew everything and that I could no longer live this lie. I explained that I would help her make arrangements for her continued care, but I could not be the one to provide it. For the first time, I wasn't looking for an apology or an explanation. I was simply closing the book. Her tears didn't move me this time. I was done. Leaving that apartment was one of the hardest and most liberating things I have ever done. I walked away from the life we built, the memories we shared, and the woman who broke me. The first few weeks were incredibly difficult. I was filled with a profound sense of loss, not just for her, but for the future I thought I was going to have. But with each passing day, I started to feel a little lighter. I began focusing on myself. I started working out again, reconnected with friends I had neglected, and I even picked up that leather journal she gave me. Instead of our adventures, I started filling it with my thoughts, my pain, and my hopes for my own recovery. Today is July 8th, 2025. It's been over 6 months since that Christmas. The healing process is slow and some days are harder than others. The scars are still there, a reminder of the betrayal and the pain, but they are also a reminder of my own strength, my resilience, and my capacity to survive. I'm learning to trust my instincts again. I'm rebuilding my self-esteem piece by piece. I'm choosing to believe that I am worthy of a love that is honest and true. I don't know what the future holds, but I know I'm walking into it alone, and for the first time in a long time, that feels like a victory. This is my path now.